Before we get started with the show, I wanted to specifically talk to those of you that are applying to very competitive sites. I'm talking about those that are going to have 100 applicants or more. And on the show today, I have Hillary Blackburn, who not only applied to an academic medical center and landed that residency, but also earned multiple residency interviews. And we talk about what it was in her journey that did it. But one of the things that she has that I've been dying to give to people, and I'm glad she wrote it so I don't have to, is a book, How Pharmacists Lead, Answers from Women Who Are Leading, Succeeding, and Impacting Pharmacy. And in that book are so many women leaders that you literally can go in there and look for the person who has done what you want to do, look at the way their bio is set up, and then turn that writing into what would be your articulation of how you have a personal brand. We hear this over and over again, that as an applicant, you need to stand out, but you want to stand out in a good way. And not through the interview, but also in this book, you can just absolutely read the exact way that you can tell, wow, this person is clearly a leader in their field. This person is clearly someone that I would want to meet in an interview. And it's already written for you. So it's just kind of a reference I wanted to make sure that you knew existed, because it doesn't say, this is really how you should write the leadership portion of the letter of intent or the cover letter. But that's what the book really is if you use it that way as a reference in this application process. So I just wanted to point you to How Pharmacists Lead, Answers from Women Who Are Leading, Succeeding, and Impacting Pharmacy by Hillary Blackburn, spelled with 2 L's. And I think it's just like $7 for the ebook on Amazon. And if you are having to apply to a competitive residency and are struggling to articulate, okay, I've got all these leadership positions and service positions, how do I put that into a brief bio? Well, she's got so many examples in there that I think that it truly, truly can help you in terms of making sure that you don't go over the top where you become and sound arrogant, but also don't undersell yourself where you have so much imposter syndrome that you're not even putting that you were president or vice president of an organization on there. Now, when I do work one-on-one with people in their letters of intent, this is something that we naturally put into it and make sure that it happens. But if you're doing this on your own, I absolutely, you need to get the book, How Pharmacists Lead, so that you can see what it is that would make a successful residency bio on someone who is going to get a academic medical center or a very competitive residency. And after you read the bio, you like, oh my gosh, I hope I didn't have to compete against somebody like this to get the residency. But instead, what I would want you to say is, wow, if I have this in my bio written in this way, it becomes so clear that I am a leader. And it doesn't sound pretentious. It doesn't sound over the top. It sounds exactly as it should. A confident articulation of your value to that residency site. So again, How Pharmacists Lead, you can get it on Amazon. I'm not sure when she's going to come out with the audiobook, but you can get it right away as an ebook, but also comes as a print book. All right, well, let's get started with the show, and you can meet Hillary Blackburn if you haven't before. But what a great leader, and what great advice for those of you who are hoping to get those top tier residencies, because they're looking for leaders. And it just absolutely breaks my heart to see so many residency cover letters that are completely lacking of all of the things that they've done during school, and that they hope that the RPD or the readers are going to look at their CV. But I know in my heart that those RPDs never got to the CV because the letter of intent didn't include those things. And while they were trying to be humble, what they ended up doing was making themselves just an average candidate, when if they had properly articulated it in that cover letter, they would be going towards an interview and likely being one of the top choices. So let's get started with the show. Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. Today I have Hillary Blackburn on, who has been a guest on the show before, and I don't think she's had her MBA now, but she is now PharmD MBA, and certainly has a lot of leadership experience. But what I really wanted to ask her were, as we are making our applications for residency in the fall, and these letter of intent and application deadlines are coming, how do you put in leadership? So the questions I keep getting are: one, I don't have a presidential or vice presidential leadership responsibility. How do I still show that I'm a leader because I have led? Or I get the opposite question, which is, how do I show that I'm president of a club without being boastful or a braggart? And I'm generally an introvert, so it's even uncomfortable for me to really present the best that I've done, but I have done all this hard work. So we're going to get into it with Hillary and talk about this. So Hillary, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast.
Hey, Tony. Thanks for having me. Great to talk about this topic.
Okay. Well, first, instead of going back and telling us your trip through pharmacy school, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your trip to pharmacy residency, because I think you did a traditional hospital residency, but then ended up kind of creating your own job and creating a non-traditional role. So can you tell us about your residency application journey?
Yeah, so finishing my last year of pharmacy school, which was all rotations, I knew that I wanted to do a residency and get that extra year of clinical skills and honing in on those with experienced pharmacists to kind of have that extra year. And residencies were becoming so much more popular, and they have just grown in that popularity and really requirements for getting those key positions in hospitals and other places. So when I applied, I had narrowed it down to a traditional PGY1 that included both the hospital and some ambulatory opportunities. And then I decided to start looking at cities and key programs that I wanted to look at. And so I am from the Southeast. I grew up in Mississippi, and so was going to look there, looked at Birmingham, Dallas, Memphis, and Nashville. And I think I sent out to either 9 or 10 different places and got back every single interview that I applied for. But I did not rank every single one of those. So to me, residency was very similar to going through Rush for a sorority and having to rank your choices. And so, not only are you looking at, is the program a good fit for you, but they're also looking at, are you a good fit for the program? And so where I landed was in Mississippi at the academic teaching hospital there at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. And it was great because I already had that rapport with all of the professors, but I had new experiences and a lot of new challenges, adding on management, those longitudinal research projects, different leadership components that you get in a residency. And so that was what I did. And then after that, moved to Nashville, and actually created my position there at an independent pharmacy, and then have had a lot of different roles until where I currently am now.
So tell me specifically about the leadership roles that you alluded to maybe when you were making the actual application. So I also was in a fraternity in the Deep South, in the SEC at the University of Florida, and we can still be friends even if our football teams are rivals. But I guess the fraternity versus sorority was very different. Where in the sorority, you go and they kind of compile all of the data, and then you do rankings, and then there's bid day. With
Mm-hmm.
fraternities, they give a bid to probably twice the number that are going to make it through the process, And then, you go from 50 in your pledge class to 25 in your pledge class. Where in Sorority Rush, if I remember right, they make those decisions ahead of time. They're very thoughtful in terms of, okay, these are the people that we want. These are the best fit. But did you include your undergraduate leadership with your leadership in pharmacy school? Maybe speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, I did. And so I went through the University of Mississippi's program, which was an early entry program. So I completed that in 6 years. So I certainly included my 4 years on the Oxford campus, which included 2 years of undergrad. And so um, I held a position with the Associated Student Body and represented the School of Pharmacy for a year. And so I definitely included that. I was in the Chancellor's Leadership class as a freshman. I pursued, different other service opportunities. I think Rotaracts, which was through Rotary, was able to attend the presidential debate because I had enough kind of service and opportunity through just my undergraduate, like things that I was involved in at the university. And then, did other things like looking at internships, even so I was technically in pharmacy school, but it wasn't associated with pharmacy, was that I went and interned on Capitol Hill and interned for a senator. So, looking for all of those different things of how are you not only involved in leadership and, doing volunteer things, like maybe you help to organize something for the Heart Walk, like, the American Heart Association does a Heart Walk every year, and our sorority was involved in doing things like that. Or maybe you organized a philanthropy event. And then in pharmacy school, I did get involved early on in those professional organizations like APHA, the student version, and did the Operation Immunization. So that, of course, is a very hot topic for right now with all the emphasis on vaccines and pharmacist roles with that. But yeah, those were some of the things that I included. And so you've got to start looking at, I'm sure that all of the students, even just to get into pharmacy school, you've got to show leadership. So it's something that I hope that you didn't just stop when you got into pharmacy school, because it's so important to continue to seek those types of leadership opportunities, not only to help you win some of those coveted residency positions, but also to help you stand out in the job market. Even if you're, you don't want to go into management, you want to be an ICU critical care pharmacist, it's still important when, that hospital system is looking at you versus another candidate. They want to know that you're going to take the initiative and like what makes you stand out. So I hope that all the students are looking at some of those different things. There are a lot of different boxes that you can check. Service, I mentioned. Teaching, maybe you're, giving back as a student and helping to facilitate scholars days or different like visits, and that's something that you could kind of put down. Or hopefully you're already seeking research opportunities. Showing that you've been involved in research is important. Not only do you get that as a resident, but you need to probably start showing that as a student. And then just, any ways that you're showing that you're really taking the initiative, showing leadership opportunities, in any clinical ways. Maybe you're, getting extra certifications, like you're getting the diabetes certification and immunization and MTM, and all of those things are important and show that you're pursuing those things.
So the big thing that is a struggle, I think, for, as you apply for residency, is taking a large amount of work over a long period of time and putting it into a couple of paragraphs, which is what really the cover letter asks for, the letter of intent asks for, and then even in some cases when they say, can you tell me about yourself? Now, you've written a book, How Pharmacists Lead, Answers from Women Who Are Leading, Succeeding, and Impacting Pharmacy. And you have taken some of pharmacy's most important leaders and put their accomplishments in 3 or 4 paragraphs. How did you take what might have been an interview that lasted 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and get the essence of who they were through their brand, and put that into writing? Because I think that's something that's really a struggle, because we don't really have that many writing assignments that would be like that in school. How did you kind of become the pharmacist writer who can take something that's very big and just take what's absolutely most important and put it into a couple paragraphs?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And thank you, Tony, for really helping to inspire the writing of the book, since you've done so many of audio books and are really the guru for that. But yes, I think that obviously communication skills and writing skills are very important. So much is done via email in this age. And yeah, like how do you decide what is the most important? And I think, out of all of the different experiences, maybe you could pull out the most important one from each of those buckets, service or clinical or research, and try to put that in and try to give examples. I think that, when you're tell me about yourself, it's really all about storytelling and how can you tell a story and give those great examples, so that whenever they ask you a question, then you can say, oh, well, when I was a student doing Operation Immunization, I led in this way, and this is the impact that it had. So I would say that, it is really challenging. And to go back to the book, a lot of those women featured have had really long careers. They may have been practicing pharmacy for 10, 20, 30, maybe more years.
Sure.
And, it is. But when you've got someone like a Lucinda Main and they've, achieved one of the very highest awards, like APHA's, like Gloria Niemeyer, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, award, then that's something that you would include. But it is interesting to see what they put in their bios. And, I obviously shared what I was going to write with every buddy that was included for their approval, and was able to seek their input as well. But yeah, those are, great little examples of people who have been in a variety of areas of pharmacy, and, whether it's functional medicine, 340B, association leadership, working for a health plan, they've all had some type of leadership track, and have shown that through service in a lot of different ways.
I wanted to dive into a couple specific pages of your book, 80 and 81. And I think when you're applying for residency, you have in your head that it is a completely fair process where no candidate has any advantage over the other as they're applying. But when you actually dig into the data and look at the numbers, for example, there's a hospital that only has students from Auburn University, or you see that a particular site only has students from 3 Michigan schools or something like that. And then you start to kind of dig in and see that there are definite preferences with, the sites. And in your book, you talk quite a bit about networking and advancement. And I think students think of networking as kind of a job that they have to do, where it's really more of a kind of a natural thing where you're just going and being with people that, have similar interests to you. How do you go about picking out of the 4,000 different spots that there are for residency? How do you go to pick those places that might have a bias towards you rather than against you, where you're kind of going into something favorable? For example, I was not from the deep South, and I thought of Florida as, I don't know what it was in my head, but I thought the University of Florida or Gainesville was more like Orlando, where it was truly part of the Panhandle. It was truly the deep South, and I culturally fit in a little bit better after I kind of understood it better. But it was kind of a culture shock as somebody from the Northeast going to the deep South. And I guess I'm asking, how do you kind of have that self-reflection, self-evaluation of stopping that whole applying to places that have prestige and apply to those places where you're really going to be a part of the team? You're really going to fit in. It's people that have the same interests as you do. How did you kind of pick those places to have such a high, match rate or interview rate? How did you pick the places where you just felt comfortable or knew that you would feel comfortable, I guess is my question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think honestly, if I was looking back as a student, um, I I wasn't as self-aware, and so I fell into that trap of looking at a few places just for the prestige. And now that I'm looking back, I'm like, wow, maybe that didn't work out because it wasn't as good of a fit. And so because there are some programs that have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because they kind of know, oh, I work for such and such health system, and everybody wants to apply here just because it's got like a big, name recognition. But, the program might not be as good, or you may not have as great of an experience as you would somewhere else. And so I definitely fell into that trap as a student. So hopefully, you're shedding light on that. And now that I can reflect back, share that more personally. But I would say, as I have learned and matured, I think that is more important than ever. And so, when we were able to go and go to conferences and actually meet people face to face, that was important. So, you do have a few days residency showcase to be able to go and talk to all the different programs that are there. I can only imagine what this year will look like with the virtual setup. But you get, those first impressions. You can even walk by a booth and kind of like just get kind of a vibe from that. But of course, do your research on the front end, and you're going to know, narrow it down by region or narrow it down by specific program. If you're, you want to do ambulatory care and you want to stick at one place and have that inside track, because a lot of times programs are going to pick people that they're familiar with, as you mentioned, like, oh, this one is definitely going to have Auburn grads or definitely going to have Michigan grads. Well, if you want that PGY2, it's good to go ahead and have your foot in the door. And so I think that the earlier on that you can make connections with people, the better, because then they're going to know who you are. Now, it is a little hard to make those connections just blindly from like LinkedIn or if you don't have a chance to kind of bump into them at a conference or in person, especially if you're, from Iowa and trying to meet somebody in Florida, you might not be at the same
Sure.
FSHP or, Florida APHA meeting, but is as much as you can, if there's maybe some well-known, like for instance, Dr. Phil Ayers is a nationally recognized nutrition expert. He's, been on the Aspen board and done guidelines, and he was one of my professors. So if someone knows they want to do nutrition support, they should be looking at who has served on Aspen and kind of like looking at, oh, well, where are they? And, probably start kind of trying to maybe follow them on LinkedIn or different things. Now, don't be stalkerish, but, kind of doing that research is really important. But yeah, obviously, just like in a sorority or fraternity, and probably what you were doing for pharmacy school is where do you feel at home? Do you feel at home with, I'm a advisor for Belmont College of Pharmacy, and I love to ask students, like, why did you pick Belmont? And so many times I say, I really like the faculty, and the faculty are just, one of the biggest assets for Belmont. And that's why a lot of people pick that college from all over the country. Of course, Nashville is a great place to live, but I think the faculty or the preceptors, the people that you're meeting, is just so important. Like, do you fit in with them, or maybe not? And so that's something that should be top of mind when you're interviewing at places.
In your book, you talk a little bit about gender roles, and one of them was that you said you found women are generally more reluctant to initiate lunch or coffee meetings, but I think you were the one that brought us together with the coffee meeting at APHA. So was there some kind of change that happened for you as you took on more responsibility as a leader? Have you made some of the changes that were maybe uncomfortable at first that are now more comfortable for you?
Yeah, well, I would say,
You're the
I guess,
connector.
yeah, if you read the book, Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Point, he talks all about connectors, mavens, and salesmen. And I love being a connector. And, networking and relationship building is something that comes really naturally to me. And so even though as a new grad, I was probably not as confident in setting those kinds of things up with people who were more established in their careers and things, as I kind of grew in that confidence as a pharmacist and professional, and kind of had some things under my belt, then I've really just embraced that part of my personality, and love that. And that's one of my favorite things that I do love about podcasting, is just being able to connect with people and share their stories. But I think that for women, it sometimes is harder to do that, or they maybe are a little more reluctant. I just see my husband, he will go for like drinks meetings or lunch meetings or coffee meetings. I mean, he would have multiple of these throughout the week. I mean, he does do business development and sales for his job, but it's so funny. And I don't know if it even becomes probably harder. And now that I'm a new mom, I think that it becomes even harder as women become moms, because there's that added level of responsibility, because, you've also got your family priorities. And, that'll probably come and go with seasons as you've got younger babies. It's probably a little harder than when they're a little more self-sufficient. But, and women are also going to be a little more reluctant and hesitant to humble brag, if you will. They're not going to be, oh yeah, I did this thing, and really it was an amazing accomplishment. And so that's also something that I think that we see a little bit in terms of gender differences. Now, there are always going to be people that break the mold, and obviously, as I've kind of come into my own, and within the first like 2 or 3 years out of pharmacy school, Now I can go up and, talk to anybody, whether they're the, CEO of a pharmacy association all the way down to, whomever. I feel comfortable and confident talking to them and making those connections and creating fun events to bring people together.
So you do mention in the book women are often more humble than men, and then the feeling of imposter syndrome. And I feel like, as the father of three daughters, and wanting them to be confident and wanting them to be able, a lot of what strengthens them is their competence in sports. And I'm going to shift a little bit towards soccer. And I know you were a soccer player. I am a soccer coach only because I have children who play soccer. And it's my third year now. So now they're in academy, which is I don't want to say it's the elite because anyone's allowed to be in, but they certainly take it a lot more seriously. And I just wanted to kind of share a little bit of a leadership story where just this last weekend we were going to an uh, out of state competition, and we'd lost a bunch of people to illness, and they couldn't be on the team, and so my daughter had to switch teams. And my daughters have always played on the same team for the last 3 years. There's never been a time where they haven't played on the same team unless they were guest playing or something like that. And what had happened when she went on this other team is that the team she was on went to the championships, and we unfortunately didn't win. We played an amazing team who just, really, really did well. And as a coach, maybe I should have prepared them a little bit better on that side. But on the other hand, while she didn't get to go to that championship game, everybody was kind of astounded that here's this 9-year-old who didn't want other people to lose their chance to get to the championship. And then she ended up taking on that leadership role. And she's not putting it on her resume. She's not putting it on her CV. But there are so many times where I feel like someone has done that. But if you were to ask her about it, she would actually minimize that. She would say, well, I really don't want to talk about that. But here we are applying to residencies, and we need to maximize that. So where I might have a guy put that he was president in the first paragraph, I'm like, you can't put that in the first paragraph. You can't put, I'm the president. It looks bad, and they think that, maybe you're not going to be coachable. Where I might see some of the young women who are applying are completely omitting the fact that they were president of a society. How do you do that humble brag in writing so that I guess I'm concerned. My big concern is this. I think they're expecting that someone is going to carefully look through their letter of intent or carefully look through their CV as much as their letter of intent, where my understanding is people only spend 15, 30 seconds on that CV to do the check boxes, and they might miss it. How do you do that humble brag in writing, I guess is what that question finally comes down to.
Mm. Well, I think that's a challenge. I like that, and I think sports are so important. And I think it teaches so many skills early on. Teamwork, especially, that's such an important skill in healthcare, and you can gain some of those leadership experiences that you can get to practice early on, and you learn about losing. Because things are not always gonna go, you're not always gonna get the job, or you're not always gonna get the residency that you want. But it teaches you a lot about perseverance and practice. There's you have a game every Saturday, or a couple Saturdays a year, but you're practicing multiple times during the week so that you're ready for the game. And so I think there's
position did you play, just to kind of give reference?
Yeah, well, I was a forward and midfielder and played all the way from, the Swarm League, and did several years of select soccer. Probably could have played in college, but knew that I wanted to focus on, I was an only child. And so and from a small town. So that allowed me to be, participate in and a lot of different extracurriculars. So I actually was head cheerleader and captain of our soccer team. And so those right there are two different leadership positions that my peers recognized early on. And I do reference those because I think it's important to show those. Those are more trait leadership. So, just different kind of characteristics that you exhibit. But now, of course, there's more of an emphasis on transformational leadership, inspiring others on your team and lifting others up and kind of creating that type of environment, not just because someone is like organized or excels or does, maybe scores the most goals or is going to. So I think that it is neat to see how leadership is changing a lot in the 21st century, and a lot of the skills that women have. They're good collaborators, they're great listeners, they're good team builders. All of those are really important in this 21st century of leadership. So I think it is important for women to share those. And to go back to your question on how do you bring those out, again, you only have so much space, so you've got to kind of pick out the most important, but try to pick ones that are unique. Or, I think that being an Eagle Scout, that is a really hard accomplishment. Not everybody can go all the way through Boy Scouts and become an Eagle. If you're an Eagle Scout, you better put that on there, because that show, and what's also really neat is if you're able to put those types of unique experiences, like maybe you played soccer in college and you were in pharmacy school, man, time management, right there. So I think that people like to read a letter of intent and pull out something because they're going to ask you about it in an interview. Like, oh, my brother was an Eagle Scout. Tell me, what was your Eagle Scout project? And then that gives you an opportunity to share about that. Or if you write, you were a college athlete, then that is a great segue for you to share about how your time management skills and how you'll be able to manage all of the different activities and requirements that are required of a resident.
Yeah, I love that. I could see you as a center mid. And for those of you that don't play soccer, the center mid has the most passing options and would connect to the most people. So I could totally see that your soccer fits to that best personality. And I guess the last question I would ask to kind of keep this around the 30-minute mark is, so in soccer, there's the goal scorer and as you go, especially in the younger levels, the one metric that the parents always look at is, did the kid score a goal and all of that? And,
yeah.
And two of our defenders, my daughter's one of them, and then another one we have, both scored a single goal during the season. And that was enough for them. They're like, okay, I did it. I'm done with that. That was neat. I felt good. But they really love being defenders. And they're just as uncomfortable in the goal scoring as someone who says, look, I'm a striker. I want to attack. It doesn't make sense for me to sit back there and well, as a defender, you really shouldn't sit back there. You should drive up and back. But anyway, to get to the point, so much, I think, of students' pressure is an expectation that they should be like someone when really they're not really being the best of themselves. And I just remember during that, the coach that on the other team was like, look, I need somebody that can score goals, but I also need a goalie. So totally. I have a very specific need. How, as an applicant, did you kind of maybe look at, or how do you look at, what is this residency really asking for? Are they asking for somebody that has community experience, ambulatory care experience, specific hospital experience? I think we always focus too much on, I want to show them all the things that I've done and put as many things that I've done, rather than actually just listen by reading, but to say, hey, what is this position really about? What position do they really need? do they really need someone that's a defender, a midfielder who's going to connect to other players, or do they need someone who's an attacker or a goalie? I think it's easier with athletics to kind of see it. But how do you, as this last question, really break down what it is that a residency site is looking for and asking for in an applicant?
Make sure you read the job description and you see what's important to them. So, are they, it will tell you right there, and even make sure that a lot of your experiences hit on some of those key phrases in the job description. And that goes even after residency, because so many times now it's not going to be a person that is reading every single resume or letter of intent. So you've got to think about how you've worded your CV or how you've worded your letter of intent, and make sure that it includes some of that language. So, if they're looking for a community pharmacist, that, something about patient counseling is important, right? And community pharmacy. Well, for example, just looking back from my background, if that was an area if that was a residency I was pursuing, well, then I'm going to highlight that I was the first runner-up for the APHA patient counseling competition. Boom. All right. Check that box. So I think it's really important to look at what they are looking for, and to make sure that your CV, and quite honestly, if your CV or your experience doesn't fit what they're looking for, then maybe you need to widen your scope or look at different opportunities.
Hillary, thank you so much for sharing your time. I know that you're a now relatively new mom, new author, doing it all. And I appreciate you taking the time to help these future residents out.
Well, thank you, Tony. And I think you give such great insight and advice. Your services are so valuable for helping them to navigate the pharmacy residency process and to feel confident as they're going in this very competitive market. So thank you for letting me be a guest on your show.
Appreciate it. Well, thanks for listening to this episode. Again, if you want to get a hold of me, TonyThePharmacist@gmail.com. I can talk to you a little bit more if you want to work one-on-one with me with a letter of intent. I have had a couple of people, and this was something new to this year, but I'm now working with some people on all their letters of intent. Usually I just work with them on 2 and kind of get them going on their way, but they recognize that this is going to be a very competitive year. And if you want to work with 12 or more letters of intent, it's $395, but I'll also help you with the CV, and then we'll have email coaching back and forth. But email me before we kind of take that step to make sure that that's something that's a good fit for you, because I only want to work with no more than 10 people in this regard. I want to make sure that I have this next tier of people that I'm helping, because there are some that, yes, I can make your letter of intent better. But if you really want someone that is there as your accountability partner, as your partner in this process, I just want to make sure that we're a good fit and that you get value for your money. So again, thanks for listening to the show. And if you want to talk to me, TonyThePharmacist@gmail.com, or check out the website residencyhelp.com. Don't forget to join our Facebook group, Residency Help, or get on our email list.